Welcome to the Pub Sports Radio, Ian Cameron Sports Report for Thursday, November 19th. We're going to preview Friday night college football on today's show. Before we do that, let's look back on the MAC-tion we saw last night with the three games that took place. We had Ball State defeating Northern Illinois, but Northern Illinois covering that game as double-digit underdogs. That game stayed under the total. We saw Toledo run away with the game against Eastern Michigan in spite of the fact they lost Eli Peters to injury in that game early in the second quarter. But the backup came in and played extremely well, and the Toledo defense, for the majority of the game, shut down the Eastern Michigan offense led by Preston Hutchinson until late when they got a couple of late scores, which did make over bettors happy. Toledo with the cover, but the game goes over the total because of those late points that were scored in the fourth quarter. An over that was never in doubt was the in-state battle between Western Michigan and Central Michigan last night. The game soaring over the total with plenty of room to spare, and Western Michigan emerging with the victory in that game over Central Michigan. Western took a commanding lead, a really good performance again by their quarterback, Ellaby, who was absolutely outstanding again. The Central Michigan offense, the Central Michigan defense, which was so good in the first two games against Ohio and Northern Illinois, two teams that maybe not ranking among the best offenses in this conference. They certainly had a much tougher time with Western Michigan's offense, which has now been humming in each of their first three games. They put up 58 against Akron. They scored a lot of points against Toledo last week, and now yesterday getting into the 40s against Central Michigan. So it was a very impressive offensive showing for Central Michigan for Western Michigan last night in their victory over Central Michigan. The game soaring over the total, which means that two of the three games in the MAC last night end up going over the total. So Western Michigan, again, very impressive shootout victory over Central Michigan 52-44 last night. All right, let's turn our attention to college football on Friday. We have three games. We'll start in the ACC. Syracuse, struggling Syracuse, taking on Louisville. The Cardinals, 19-point home favorites, 56.5 the total. From a Louisville perspective, this game should be one that they win going away, win handily. They probably have a shot to win this game by the 3 touchdowns necessary to cover as 19-point home favorites. But there's a lot of issues with this team in terms of guys opting out. We've already seen Javian Hawkins, starting running back, 822 rushing yards this season, opting out. Tutu Atwell missed the last game as well for Louisville against Virginia. A bunch of late scratches, especially on defense. The defensive line was weakened by absences last Saturday against Virginia for this Louisville team. So to me, it's a very, very that's the reason that I would be hesitant, to lay the 19 points here with Louisville in this game. I'm just not totally sure how many hands are going to be on deck here on both sides of the ball for this Louisville team. The one thing that should be good news for Louisville, especially on offense, is that even with Hawkins gone, they should be able to run the football with ease. Syracuse all season long has just simply not been able to stop the run. They have been shredded by opposing teams on the ground this season. I still remember early in the year when Duke, who's not, a juggernaut offense by any stretch of the imagination, absolutely did significant damage to this Syracuse run defense. Louisville is one of those teams that they're better running the football on offense than throwing it. Mikael Cunningham's decent throwing the football, but he's not, outstanding in terms of the passing game. This is a Louisville offense that would prefer to be able to run the football, to set up the pass. They should absolutely be able to have success doing that here against Syracuse, who are allowing 224 yards per game on the ground, 4.8 yards per carry. When Louisville can run the football, it just completely opens up their offense, and they should be able to open it up here against Syracuse. Let's not forget they played Virginia Tech. They were able to run the football. They scored 35. They were able to run the football against Florida State. They scored 48 in that game. To me, with the absolute dismal downturn in the Syracuse defense, which has also suffered significant injuries on all three levels of the defense this season, to me, there's really no reason for Louisville not to have a monster offensive game here. On the flip side, Syracuse offensively Yeah, they've had a tough time. They've been held to 21 points or less in 4 straight games. It's been a tough year for Dino Babers' team, 1-7 straight up on the year. Even Louisville, a disappointing 2-6 straight up. So 2 teams that at this point are probably unlikely to go bowling either. So it's which team is going to show you that greater focus is going to be the question. But I think for Syracuse offensively, they could get a key offensive lineman back in terms of their starting offensive line for this game. The bye week certainly helping him in that regard. And they're going to go with the freshman quarterback for a second straight game here, Jacobian Morgan, who got the start against Boston College before the bye. You know, he wasn't phenomenal by any stretch, 19 of 30 against Boston College, 63% completion rate, 188 yards through the air, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Not great numbers, but what I do like for him is now he finally gets a extra practice time with this offense. It can't hurt. It's not like Louisville's defense is great by any stretch of the imagination. They have had trouble slowing down opposing offenses this year. You look at some of their point totals that they've allowed. They gave up 47 to Miami, 46 to Georgia Tech, 42 to Virginia Tech, 31 last week to Virginia. I do think Syracuse can do some things offensively here against this Louisville defense that still might be shorthanded on the defensive line if they are without starters again on that unit like they were last week against Virginia. So to me, this could be an overlook at 56.5. It's a reasonable total. Syracuse has slowed down their pace a little bit. They're not going hyperspeed, warp speed with their up-tempo offense that they typically have in the past under Dino Babers. But I think off the bye, you're going to see this offense have some success at least. And Louisville on the other side against this Syracuse defense that has absolutely been carved up in terms of their run defense all season. That should play into Louisville. That should play out very well for Louisville in this game in terms of the success they need to have running the football if their offense is going to work. So I do lean to Louisville, but again, I want to see exactly who's going to be playing and who's not for them in this game. But more than anything, the bet that intrigues me the most would be over 56.5 here between Syracuse and Louisville. We've got Purdue and Minnesota in the Big Ten on Friday night. Purdue 2.5-point road favorites, 61 the total. Minnesota's defense has been absolutely god-awful this year. It's really been disappointing to see what we've gotten from this defense throughout the course of the season. They gave up 49 to Michigan, 45 to Maryland, 35 last week against Iowa. Really, the only team they shut down was Illinois. And Illinois, of course, is working on a backup quarterback the last few weeks, but it has been disappointing for PJ Fleck's defense. And that goes without saying. Now you're going to have to play a Purdue offense that really hasn't fully, gotten it rolling this year. Rondale Moore, we've been waiting now, going on the 4th game of the season here for Purdue, for him to finally play. It's still up in the air whether he's going to play in this game or not for the Purdue Boilermakers. Obviously, he's a difference maker. It will help Aiden O'Donnell, the quarterback, who's really not had a lot of other receivers step up other than David Bell. David Bell's been great, but not having Rondale Moore play yet this year for Purdue, I think, has hampered this offense a little bit. Minnesota's defense has been bullied up front in the trenches, but the Purdue offensive line's very, very green, very, very inexperienced. So to me, it's kind of like one of those toss-up situations. Who's going to win that battle? Purdue's inexperienced, still developing offensive line, or Minnesota's defense that has just been pushed around at the point of attack all season long? That's a difficult game. There has been some upward movement in the total, and given the state of Minnesota's defense, I don't necessarily disagree, but I do wonder if Purdue's the kind of team that can capitalize and take advantage of some of these defensive issues that Minnesota's had. I don't want Minnesota, I can tell you that. I had my fill of taking a shot with Minnesota when they played last Friday night against Iowa, and it was a complete wrong side. I'm staying off Minnesota for the time being. I'm not going to be on Purdue either, but it's just the slightest of leans to me here to the over, with some doubts that Purdue's offensive line is, even against a Minnesota defense that's been struggling, can they take advantage of it? They've had some protection issues. They've had trouble running the football throughout the early part of the season. When you look at Minnesota, they did play Talia Tagovailoa in Maryland. They did play Iowa, a team that can really run the football. You're not necessarily going to get that from Purdue. 61 yards per game 2.5 yards per carry this season running the football. They may not be able to run it successfully here against Minnesota. I know Minnesota's been just horrendous in terms of their run defense, but Purdue's also had trouble running the football. So to me, it's all around. Minnesota's defense has not been good, but Purdue's offense has been just as, shaky so far. So it's a question of almost like flipping a coin. Who's going to win that battle? Purdue offense versus Minnesota defense. That's probably where the game's decided. I have no clue who's going to win it. So for me, that's exactly why I'm staying off the game. But I would lean a little bit to the over. And the over is 7-1, by the way, in the last 8 meetings between the Boilermakers and the Golden Gophers. And we have Mountain West action on Friday night as well, the third and final game on the Friday night college football slate. New Mexico Lobos, Air Force Falcons. Air Force 7-point favorites, 55.5 the total. I don't want the favorite here. Air Force laying a touchdown. They are a team that has had lots of COVID-19 issues that has resulted in some of their games being postponed. They haven't played since Halloween night when they played Boise State. So you're talking about 2.5 weeks, almost 3 full weeks since this team has played a football game. We don't know who's going to be available for this Air Force offense going into this, or Air Force team going into this game against New Mexico. We know against Boise State, they were a little bit shorthanded on defense, and that showed up in that 49-30 loss against Boise State. New Mexico, on the other hand, I got to give New Mexico credit. They are 0-3 straight up. Doesn't look good. They haven't won. At least Air Force beat Navy in their first game, then lost to San Jose State and Boise State, which aren't bad losses for Air Force. San Jose State and Boise State, obviously pretty good teams so far this year in the Mountain West. And it looks like New Mexico, 0-3, they're terrible, but they've covered the number in 2 straight games in defeat. 39-33 loss against Hawaii. Let's give them credit last week against Nevada, playing at Sam Boyd Stadium against the Wolfpack. Remember, New Mexico has been basically evicted from playing in Albuquerque because of worries of COVID-19 issues there. So they're playing their games out of Las Vegas right now in Sam Boyd Stadium. They played Nevada last week, who have been terrific to begin the year, and they gave Nevada everything they could handle, losing 27-20. They were threatening to win that game outright. They were in the game from start to finish. There are things to like here about this New Mexico team. Even the defense, to hold Carson Strong and this potent Nevada offense to 27 points. Pretty solid effort from this New Mexico team. They were without their starting quarterback last week, Tavaka Tuioti. He will be a game time decision for this game, but the backup quarterback, Trey Hall, wasn't terrible for New Mexico. And in fact, he's been able to lead this team on offense the last couple weeks to some success. Obviously, I think Tuioti is the guy they would rather have throwing the football. And obviously, if he's healthy enough to return from that concussion injury, then he'll be playing here for New Mexico. But either way, I like the signs I'm seeing from New Mexico. And in terms of their defense, they have become one of those teams, at least early in the season, where, if they're playing against a run-heavy team, they can probably shut you down. If they're going up against a team that's very good throwing the football through the air, that's when New Mexico struggles. Well, this should be a good matchup for New Mexico. We know Air Force is going to run the triple option, the run-heavy triple option offense, and New Mexico has given up just 81 yards on the ground this year per game, 3.1 yards per carry. It should be a good matchup here for New Mexico. They're better, much better defensively against the run than they are against the pass, and obviously that's what Air Force is going to be doing quite a bit this year. And it's worth noting the defensive coordinator and former San Diego State head coach Rocky Long, he's now the defensive coordinator for New Mexico, and he's really done a good job against triple option offenses in the past. He's faced them a lot. He knows what to expect, how to scheme for it, and have success stopping it. So, the money's come in on the dog here, and I completely agree. I mean, to me, this is a New Mexico +7, or you leave the game alone, especially with so many question marks and so many unknowns going into this game about who's going to be available to play for Air Force, dealing with the COVID-19 issues throughout the team that have prevented them from playing for the last 3 weeks. Plus, again, they haven't played in 3 weeks. How sharp are they going to be for this game against New Mexico? So to me, it's a New Mexico look for me at +7 in this game. It wouldn't surprise me to see this be a very competitive game and New Mexico having a shot to win it. And let's not forget, New Mexico's last 2 games against Hawaii and Nevada, losses by 7 points or less in both of those games. And even the season opening loss, 38-21 to San Jose State, that loss is looking better by the week with the great job San Jose State has done to begin the season and the great coaching job Brent Brennan has done there. So, no shame in either of the losses. They were competitive in defeat against two pretty solid teams in Hawaii and Nevada in their last two games, New Mexico. And I'd lean with them here, catching the points +7 on the road here against Air Force. A lot of unknowns with Air Force that make me worried about them as touchdown favorites here in this Mountain West matchup taking place on Friday night. All right, that'll wrap up this edition of the Pub Sports Radio Ian Cameron Sports Report for Thursday, November 19th. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Reminder to check out the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel daily for great content. I will be back with you with the Friday edition of the Pub Sports Radio Ian Cameron Sports Report tomorrow. It's the Friday football six-pack, 3 college games on Saturday, 3 NFL games on Sunday. I'll break them down for you right here from a betting perspective on the Friday edition of the Ian Cameron Sports Report. Make sure you write this down or remember it in the back of your mind. Next Tuesday on the Ian Cameron Sports Report. So that's next Tuesday, November 24th. That is the eve of the beginning of the college basketball season. We're going to do a college basketball, just overall season preview, just quick hitters on some conferences, some teams to get you ready for college basketball. That's next Tuesday. We'll do that right here on the Ian Cameron Sports Report. Thanks for watching, and enjoy your Thursday night. Enjoy the 2 football games taking place tonight, including Arizona-Seattle. Should be a good one in the NFL. Have a great Thursday night. I will be back with you tomorrow on Friday for the next edition of the Pub Sports Radio Ian Cameron Sports Report.